Hi everyone, I'm Mark de Grasse. Welcome to Podcast Mark, where I talk to my friends, colleagues, and other professionals in the space about literally everything, especially personal development, which I've found is increasing importance in every aspect of your life, especially if you want to be successful. A man, a lot of my guests have been some of the most amazing men that I've met in my life, and Josh Lee is definitely one of those guys. So, welcome, Josh.
Mark, good to see you, brother. I mean, again, you and we could, I hope everyone's strapped in because I think you and I could probably sit here and talk for a couple of hours and just go through multiple different, as we already probably talked 30 minutes
We
before
already
starting
did.
this. So
I'm like, oh crap, I better press record at some point. But no, I'm always excited to talk to you. And I think, the other platform, specifically digital marketer, because I was there hosting the show for so long. We always talked about the business side and AI and LinkedIn development and all that kind of awesome, fun stuff. But, at
yeah,
the end of the day, we're both dads, we've both been through some crap. And so I always like to touch on that stuff
dude,
because
I wrote an entire book about my crap. So, I mean, it's just,
well,
I
yeah, but
love this
then,
stuff. I'm
you know,
people are like, why you write, why you do that? Dude, I just had to be able to say all the crap that I was told I shouldn't say forever. So like, dude, like when you told me like this podcast is about that for men going through the things that we go, like that's more important. Those are the things that were holding me back from where I am today, where I was seen as successful
mm,
monetarily. That's how most of the world see, but now I feel successful. It's a
yes,
massive difference compared to be seen versus feeling knowing, right? Like, and my success is not based off of monetary value. It's being a dad, have amazing friends like you, being adding value to this world, not just monetizing it. So, dude, we'll have some fun and go anywhere you want to go today.
I love that. Yeah, well, it's I think that for me, my big awakening moment was kind of realizing that all this stuff, all the, having successful businesses or doing successful projects and building this perception of success, which largely, and I think it's changing now, was part of the system where you're like, okay, well, I can't say that I'm struggling because then people will say that, my business isn't good or
Yeah.
I'm not handling my stuff and so I can't be trusted. So I think we've all been kind of brainwashed into portraying this like, nope, I got all my crap together. Everything's going fantastic. Like, if you really want to be successful, you should do what I'm doing. And we were kind of forced into that, which is detrimental for everybody, as far as I'm
Yeah,
concerned.
dude. I
Because
mean, 100%.
you know,
It's
and
just one
then
of those pieces, Mark, that I was thinking like, I want to say like, oh, like as men, we were holding ourselves back. But I mean, it's not just a man thing, right? It's men and women being able to go through. Now, I will tell you, as women, especially I look at my wife, they're more emotionally connected. And it's being able to go through, talk about what's going on, talk about feelings, being able to go through there. I mean, it's something that we are still trying to learn as men. I was just at an event by Giovanni called Billions out in Miami, and I had Dr. Jeff Spencer.
mhm. No,
Dr.
I've talked a little
If
bit.
you don't, I'll introduce you. Amazing human. Again, needs to be on this show. But him and his wife were asking me like, because look, dude, you talk about being a dad. Like I'm a new dad again after 11 years,
Oh,
and they asked like, what's different about being a dad now with my 4-month-old little girl versus when I was a dad 11 and 14 years ago, right? And I said, she goes, is it better or worse? And I said, I think it's better. Like these days as men, we can be more emotionally connected, more emotionally, visible. We can talk about the good and the bad and be able to share that in a way where we're not shunned going, oh, well, that's not how a man acts. That's not what you should
mhm.
do. Like, you know, puff up your chest and act like nothing's wrong, and and be the guy that lifts all the heavy shit and reaches the high stuff on the shelf. And it's like there's other aspects of that. I mean, like I truly, appreciate being a father in today's world because it allows me, just like the pictures behind me, like I have the male and the female ethos, and I try to sit
Mhm.
between those because it allows me to be able to show not only my son, but also my daughters both sides of a coin.
Well, and that's the most important part because now as a father and for you being a father again, which kudos to you because that's incredible. I
Yeah,
I
man,
think about
I'll
that
just be in
sometimes.
my late 60s when my daughter graduates high
Hey,
school.
who
Hey, here's
cares?
grandpa. No, that's my dad.
As a dad, like, oh, whatever. It's funny because I see some of those guys at my son's school where they're like older dads. They're like, 55, 60 years old. And you're kind of like, wow, you're getting back into it. And some of them, they're doing it for the first time. And it's kind of like, wow, oh, good for you.
Yeah.
It's when I had kids in like my late 20s, like I think I was almost 30 when I had my first son. And even then I thought like, man, I'm so glad I didn't do this in my early 20s, because in your early 20s, you're all about you. You're all about making it. You're all about working 100-hour weeks to, build something. And I think it would have been really difficult to go into like, okay, now I'm going to give away all my time and I'm going
Yeah.
to refocus 100% of my priorities, and I'm going to learn something that's extremely difficult that I've never done before, and literally nobody can train you to do very well, because it's
Oh man,
all,
I had that
yeah.
conversation with my wife this time around. And I also had to remember the things that, even though I've experienced them before, they are different now. And I was
Oh yeah,
reminded of
way
that a couple
different.
different times. But like I appreciate that because you talk about that, man, and it's yeah, I had my son when I was almost 30. It's funny, like my grandfather had my father when he was 30. My dad had
Mhm.
me when he was 30. Of course, I was trying to plan it.
That
Didn't
was
hit
mine.
perfectly, really close, being able to go into those things. And I think it would have been different, right? Like I've mentioned not only my wife, but other amazing friends of mine that are female about men. It's like, look, as a man, we put everything into feeling successful, especially in business. Either it's in their job or their career or their company, and that will always come first until they feel that sense of, okay, I've done it. I feel like I've done at least enough to be able to support someone else.
Mm,
So if you come into a man's life at too young of an age, they don't feel that success in quote unquote business, whatever that may look like to them. You will always be second, because again, that's what we just inherently as men, we are raised to be the supporter, to be the provider, right? To be able to go in. And if you can't actually be able to be that provide, like that was one of the biggest things. Like I never felt confident enough to have children until I felt like I
mm,
could provide for my wife if she didn't want to work, and then for my kids. Now, is that a fallacy? Possibly.
mm.
It holds things back, but I mean, like that's just how I was raised, and I sometimes the future generations, I don't know if they have that same kind of thinking.
No. Well, and hopefully they don't, because it's I've learned so much from being a dad, and but back then I wouldn't have, because I would have been like, no, it's me first. I gotta push, I gotta go, I gotta make it.
Yeah.
And now I think, after having so many lessons from my sons, where I'm just like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize 90% of this stuff. And you try to explain that to people, because there is a huge trend of people just being like, I'm never having kids. Like kids are, I'm not bringing kids into this horrible world. And I don't have the money to support kids properly. And people make up all these excuses for it. And do what you want. It's your life. And honestly, we have enough people. So it's not like they're, well, or
Yeah.
do we? Because that's also, I mean, we have depopulation problems in most of the world now, or at least the
Yeah.
the first world countries, America, Japan. You see these birth rates are
Well,
just
in
dropping.
Japan now they're lifting the limit
Yeah.
on one child, one and a half kids. Now you're allowed to have two.
Oh no, that's China.
Okay.
Japan, they just stopped. They just said
You're
like,
right.
ah, no, yeah. But you have these massive aging populations, and so literally, governments are going to start encouraging people to have kids, and it's just hilarious, because it's like it was so not that way for so.
Yeah.
Oh, there's too many people are ruining the world, and everything's destroyed because of people, and we had this very negative view of our own species, and I think I realized this a few years back, where I was like, you know what, if you saw a lion and say lions could talk, and the head lion's like, you know what, being a lion sucks. Like we're a problem. Like we just kill things, and we're just bad, and be better if the world would be better without us. You'd be like, shut up, lion. Like you're part of the ecosystem. You're a very important part of the ecosystem. Like you got to
Yeah.
do your job, and your non-existence is not going to help anything. And then we came up with this nihilistic, fatalistic view of humanity. I'm like, no, what the hell are you guys talking about? Like, this
Yeah.
is our job, is to raise up the species. Our job is to make the world better. And yeah, we screw up just like everybody does, like, and everything does. It's not perfect, but we do our best. But I'm sure as hell gonna support the species because I love my
Yeah.
kids and my family and my friends and my community, and I want
I think,
everybody
I
to.
mean, it's narcissistic if you're not scared, right? To be able to go through. I mean,
Yes.
let's just be honest. People talk about something like, I get scared every time I speak on stage. I'm like, good. Like if
Yeah.
you got up there, like that's a little narcissistic. If you're like, cool, I do this all the time.
I'm the
Like we
best.
all get that. You and I speak on stage all the time, and it's just one of those pieces. But I mean, let's be honest, brother. I mean, like I was going to be a dad 11 years later. And I mean, look, it wasn't easy, right? Like, I mean, we went through IVF for 2.5 years. Like, if I sat up here, I'm like, oh, dude, I wasn't, dude, I was scared out of my mind to be a father again, that I wouldn't be enough. Like, these are the things that we kind of go through. Even though I feel successful, I'm very confident where I'm. I have an amazing partner now. All these things, I was scared. And like you said, the money it was one thing. Like, man, like, okay, I'm gonna have to hustle more.
Yep.
Now it's like I look back, I look at my daughter's face, 4 month old, and I'm like, how did I ever even question
How
this
is this a
decision? But it,
question?
it happens to the best of us.
Well, it's just doubt and fear and the unknown and really common things that everybody's scared of and that you just have to deal with. But I
Makes
think
us
there's
human.
been it's human. Yeah, well, it's just the experience, right? And I think it's arrogant to think that you could change that experience just by making non-decisions, by not deciding you're suddenly going to be like above the system. Like, oh well, I'm not part of the problem, so I guess it's you. And it's like, are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure we're all going through the same thing.
All right. So this popped in my head. And again, everyone listening, just realize Mark and I will just go in random. We both probably have ADHD and we'll just have random conversations between them conversations. We'll eventually get back to the point.
Yeah,
But
yeah, you remember.
as you're saying that, you talk about being the problem. A buddy of mine, Jesse Elder, about being, they don't realize they are traffic. Like if you're in it, you can't be like, oh my God, I hate traffic. Like you were part of the problem. You are traffic, right? And that's the same situation. Like mind blown, right? Like, oh, traffic sucks.
Yeah. Oh, how about you? Yeah, you can take one car off the road right now if you feel like it. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, wait. But I think we generalize our problems, right? Like it's not us driving too much and that's why there's pollution. It's not us not recycling enough and that's why there's too much trash in the ocean or whatever. It's everybody else. And what can I do? I'm just one person. And it's kind of funny because all those kind of tropes you heard growing up and through because when we went to school, in grade school, there was Dare, there was,
Yep.
only like two channels on television, and so you saw PSAs like constantly, like the more you know, and it's like, oh, or even
Now
even the
everyone's
TV.
like, okay, I'm getting a gauge on how old these guys are.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, wait a second, there's only two channels. Yeah, but it's that was kind of great. That was actually pushed into us, like, hey, here's how to be a good citizen. And not that it doesn't happen anymore, but I think there's so many media channels that people didn't get that same message that we had. And so we're kind of I don't know, we're kind of privileged in that way. Like, man, we were taught much better than a lot of the things I see today,
Oh
especially
yeah.
with media and entertainment.
Hell, I
So
pay I pay to not watch commercials. So
I everybody pays for everything.
like how much extra do I have to pay to not watch commercials? $10 a month? Done. Like, yeah, no, like if there is a PSA, I don't see it anymore. So
Yeah, no, it's supposed to be, I mean, then it was educators and then it was shifted to parents and that whole dynamic has shifted wildly since then. And
correct.
even times where I'm just like, okay, we send our kids or my younger son Declan goes to Regents, which is a
Yep.
classical
Down the street from
education
me.
down the street from me, right across. You get annoyed by those kids all the time. But I mean, we specifically went to the school for, to avoid some of the issues that you see in other schools. And honestly, it still has issues. It's a fantastic school and we completely love it and couldn't even imagine being anywhere else. But the issues are still there. And a lot of them are cultural, where you're talking about, kids with cell phones. And it's kind of like, you want to think that you can ingrain children with so many principles that they'll make the right decision no matter what. But it's like, nah, the devil has a way to work around that situation, especially if everybody just pretends that things are okay and just don't address the issue. Now
Yeah,
you have an issue, and now it's not something that you were expecting. So I don't know where I was going with that, but
I
times are
get it,
different
dude.
than when we
Yeah.
were growing up.
But I mean, like, we can end on this because I mean, like, because you and I could talk about being dads and the things that go on with our kids. But I mean, being 100% open. I mean, even last night, I got a call from my daughter. She was scared. I have a blended family, divorced, remarried, being able to go through. And my son had gotten overworked up, couldn't, calm himself down. You know, honestly, he kicked coal in the wall too, and the whole thing was going crazy. And like, I went over there, and I mean, like, I think too, he just needed to be held and said, hey, man, it's okay, calm down, and you're all right. Things are going on because he deals with significant high ADHD, and has some. I mean, you talk about cell phone devices. I mean, he deals with a lot of different issues. I mean, that kids go through these days. And, this morning I was having a conversation with him and we just kind of talked it out
Mhm.
and being able to go through. And so, I mean, like, it's not like, no matter who's listening, watch, like, we all have different things that we go through. We all have different, no matter how amazing we might look online that we go through. Mark, I mean, with your son, and I mean the struggles that you and your wife, I mean, to be a go through and raise a special needs child. I mean, like, it's not easy, right? And like, a lot of times, like, we started this whole conversation at the beginning, we were told in the earlier stages in our lives not to talk about these things. And I
Mm.
think now, by you and I being able to share the things that we go through, as recent as last night of what I was going through, having to take my son home from his mom's and take him over here to be able to make sure he felt okay. It's we live in a world that it's okay to be able to share about it. And I hope that we're able to give permission to other people just by sharing what we're going through. Other guys can understand that it's okay and they're not alone.
Yeah, well, and that's what it's all about. I mean, I think I was lucky enough to realize that at a young age that like money doesn't fix everything. And honestly, rich people have just this different set of problems that, or rich people, it's like, what does that even mean
It's all
anymore? It's like,
relative, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
But you think that there's some group of people that have it all figured out. And, the more you kind of get into it, you get into the, kind of wealthy culture and you realize like, oh no, it's just a different set of terrible problems that you can have. And honestly, there's way more at stake, when you're saying like, okay, you're successful, you've now built up this kind of like little empire, you have all your assets set up, but now you're expected to maintain everything and not just maintain everything, but excel everything forever into the future. And that's honestly, I talk about just, personal finances and family finances, but that's the problem with most large corporations where you see the situation where COVID happened. And yeah, there were some inventory issues and yeah, there were some supply chain issues and blah, blah, blah. And prices went up. But due to the way we've set up the system is you can't go back. You can't say like, oh yeah, we just had record profits and we're making more money off of less sales than ever before. But we have to be responsible and realize that our costs haven't actually increased at all, maybe at this point. And we're just railing the system and just
Which company does that? Because I'm pretty sure they're all like, man, we're
it's
hurting. And
all
then like record profits. I'm like,
record pro. Oh, we gotta fire everybody. Sorry. Oh, COVID. And you're
yeah,
like, wait a
yeah,
second. What are you talking about? But if you look at the system, if you look at the executives, the boards that are there, they're supposed to go up to their investors and be like, you know what? I know that we had crazy profits. I know we all made tons of money, but this is now gone past that. And we have to take a couple years where we readjust. You guys will understand, right? And the investors, it's a faceless corporation. They're not going to understand that at all. They're going to say, you're all fired. Let's get
yeah,
somebody in here who's going to do the right thing for us.
yeah. It goes through trends too, brother. I mean, I look at companies, I've been doing this for over 20 years. I mean, I remember getting involved in the online advertising business back in '03 through '06. I mean, like, the amount of money that was spent by online advertising, because we were just printing money back then. I mean, dude, I remember, I go to parties, they ran it out all of, I'm saying Astroworld, that's Houston, but Six Flags, right? And then rented out Universal and like every ride's free, all the food, like every office had freaking lunch brought in. Every office had like an entire game room, and it was just like exorbitant spending. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, well,
All
we got
done.
it. We spent too much. Like, heads weren't cut. It was the lower end people like, oh yeah, well
Mm.
shit. Maybe we should have been paying attention to actually what we were creating, because again, it was I think it was they were so focused on how much money they were making rather than the impact. And I can speak from that specific thing because again, I spent mine. That's what I was taught to be able to make and amass as much money as possible, being able to go through. And when I look back after, almost $1 billion in advertising that I controlled, over 35 trillion online impressions, like I don't know how many people I helped.
Mm.
And I sold a lot of crap, I think.
Yeah,
I,
you did
I moved a
amazing.
lot of traffic around, but like I don't feel like the impact that I had on the world was significant enough, especially for me to be proud to stand in front of my kids and be able to get, look what your dad does every day. I remember going on different things like, what do you do? I'm like, don't worry about it, right? Like
Yeah, it's too
I make
confusing to
money, I
even explain.
monetize whatever. And and now like people ask me what I do, man, I can't not smile because I see
Mm.
the impact that I do every single day. And I mean, I see the same thing in you, right? I mean, like you've made massive transitions in your business and your life to be able to be where you are, AKA like, everyone, if you know Mark, he was in this amazing studio and now he's just in his room right now. But I mean, like it doesn't change that you're not an amazing podcast host, human being, and marketer. So I think that's what people need to understand is like you and I, once we actually learn how to be able to, we make the goal of being impacted, allow the byproduct of that to be whatever else we need to be able to feed. And then we continue to be able to roll because there's always things going to pop up. I mean, and as the better you learn to be able to get yourself up and stand back up again, the better you can continue to be able to make this world a better place, not only for yourself, but for your kids and the other generations as well. And that's what we need more of. We need more people seeing that impact, allowing the byproduct for them, not making the focus about them.
Mm.
If that makes sense.
Oh, no, that's extremely well said. Because we're really talking about is purpose. You have a purpose, and honestly, that the purpose is to make as much money as possible is a terrible purpose, and it can be a purpose. A lot of people say like, "Oh, well, that's not a real purpose." It's
No,
like, no,
it's
that's
hollow.
some
Yeah.
people. Well, it's hollow. It's meaningless. You're not actually providing value, and even if you are supported by the society that says like, no, you're doing great, you're killing it, you're making lots of money. I think for business owners are like, I'm providing jobs to people. Like I'm putting food on the table because I
Yeah.
provide this job that somebody has now because of me. But now we're entering an age where that's not even necessary anymore. You could
Yeah.
probably build a 5-person $1 billion company if you know what to do,
I've
and
seen
it's
people do it. Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
exactly.
dude, like you talk about that, right? Like if I look back, I mean, like again, we talked about me being successful at that point. I use those same, things to make me feel better about like, well, I'm providing for the families, I've got to be able to do this. And I still found myself in my home office with a door shut, not only finding sanctuary, but finding myself in a coffin that I would actually contemplate looking at the wall for 8 hours a day if the money I would leave for my kids, if I wasn't around anymore, would be more important than me.
Mm. Oh man.
And, I thank God every day, like, that I didn't make the wrong decision based on what society was actually pushing me to do. And I made a better decision, not only for myself, for my kids to be able to change the situation I was in, even though it was successful, right? Like monetarily. And I mean, dude, I mean, like to be able to put myself first and my kids first. It's crazy to think, but I walked away from everything. And at 36, I moved back in with my parents with a little bit under $1,000 my name to be able to do the right thing, not only for myself, for my kids. And people see that, and we're taught that's not the right way to do it. Like the right way is to make more money,
Yeah.
work more hours. And that's what's right for you. That's what's right for your kids. And so we see, a lot more people, in the situations they're in right now we lose people every single day, especially entrepreneurs, because it's a vicious cycle.
Oh, yeah, well, you just realize that oh crap, and that's what I went through where I realized like, oh crap, it doesn't matter how much I achieve or money I make or cars I have or property that I have and all these things, and you're like, man, this matters nothing. On top of it, that you realize just how temporary it is because you could be, I went through the same thing. I went broke after I had in my early 20s. I was doing real estate investing and I was part of a tech startup and I was doing all these things and it 100% fell apart. And then I had to go through this whole reset when I was like 27. And I was just like, oh man, the entire structure that I thought I was planning all this out and I thought I had it all figured out. And you just realize, like, nope, you don't know anything. And it's like, oh no, like what have I done? What if I wasted all of my time? And the solace that you could take is that, you haven't wasted your time. That was a
Yeah.
lesson that you had to learn. And you obviously were on off path, because if you were on path, one, maybe all that stuff, the bad stuff would have happened anyways, but you would have handled it 100% different. And
Yeah.
and something that was probably a disaster would have now turned into just another learning opportunity where you're like, things go wrong sometimes and it's completely out of your control. And your perception of what happened is really what's going to either break you or make you. And you got to decide that. Or you just go through the lesson again. And you see people do that all the time where you just see them repeat and repeat and
Oh, yeah.
repeat. And you're like, somebody's trying to teach you something and you're just refusing to learn. And so it's going to get harder and more painful every time. Ah, it's that's one realization about life that I've had where I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is it. Like, this is the lesson. Either learn it right now or get ready for a harder one next time.
Oh, yeah. And you said something really profound, Mark. You said it's your perception of yourself, right? Like, and I think that's the biggest thing. Like, we don't actually take that in consideration of how we perceive ourselves. It's our perception of other people's perception of us.
Mm.
And honestly, that's what drives most of us crazy. We have no clue. Like, if I was like, oh, well, Mark thinks this of me, unless you've told me that, that is my perception of your perception of me. And I mean, that's what drives most people crazy. Like, we cannot be able to do that. So, like, the only thing that we can actually understand is how we perceive ourselves in this world and what we do to be able to continue to push that in a positive fashion. And we have to be able to let go of what others maybe perceive of us as, I mean, you're just an asshole. And I mean, you're just going wrong in the world. Like, maybe you should like take in some of the feedback that you're getting. But
Everybody's wrong. I'm the
yeah,
best. And
yeah,
you're like,
there's,
okay. I mean,
yeah.
that's neat that you have that self-perception. I've said that in the past too, where it's like some people, and it's like the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you're just like, man, you are the most incompetent, unawake person I've ever met, but you are so happy about it, and you're so confident, and you have this, and you're just like, and everything's going wrong, and that doesn't matter to you either. And it's almost like you're not jealous of that. Well, maybe you're a little jealous, where you're just like, man, I've had to go through so many things to even have just a fraction of realization that, like, what my existence actually is. And you just are just blindly powering through, like everything's going great. And
Yeah.
I don't know whether they have it figured out or they're so far off track that it's just like, oh, he's just out of the woods somewhere. Just leave him alone.
Yeah.
He's fine.
These things always go through. Dude, I mean, like recently to be honest, I got jealous of my wife, right? Like, I've been doing this LinkedIn thing for a long time. I'm very well known for it. And a couple weeks ago, all of a sudden, my wife got the notification. She was a LinkedIn top voice, something I've strived for years. Like, dude, I just got LinkedIn. Like, congratulations, you've been on this platform for 18 years. And I'm like,
You're like,
18 years. It's been
thanks.
around for 20. It's turning 21 this year. I've been on it for 18 years. And, at first I was like, and I tried to like, oh, that's amazing. I sat there like, look, whatever's good for you is good for me. Right. Like, and I said that to my wife, even though I still had that inside, I was like, what the F? Like, dude, like, I'm sitting here busting my ass. And then I was like, you know what? That's the wrong thing, right? Like, she creates amazing content on that platform. She really does put her heart and soul into it. And like, look, people get different opportunities, different things are going on. Like, it doesn't dim my light if she's being shined upon. And so like, and I at first and then I had to come to like, we had a conversation. I was like, look, she's like, I know how you feel. I'm like, you can fake it all day long. And that's the guys who are taught to fake it. Like, oh, that doesn't
Oh,
bother me. I'm good. But yes. And luckily my wife is there and I'm very blessed. Like, I've, built a partnership and like, ain't my first time. So I learned from the first, that I have someone that lovingly will call me out on my BS, and I mean, that's truly, I think a lot of us need that in our life, right? To be able to say, look, I know you better than that. That's BS. Let's talk about what's really going on.
Yeah, wow. No, well, and you just taught everybody that the lesson, and the lesson was you realize something and you're feeling about it, and then you examine that feeling and realize what it was, and then we're able to move past it. And that's something that, that I go through the Carl Jung's shadow work. I'm going through a
Yeah.
book for that. And that's exactly what it's about. Because when you have all you have to do is realize like the trigger, right? It's like somebody else's success made me unhappy. And then you're like, that's crazy. And I benefit from that success too, because it's your significant other. And you were able to come around and realize like what was going on, and now you grew from it. And so it was a positive for everybody around.
I want
And
to be able to show my kids that too. And I forget who said the quote, but it rings true, right? To know your own darkness is to truly know yourself. And
Mhm.
I don't think most of us actually sit with that, right? To be able to go in like truly what is our deepest, darkest, in our heart and our thoughts and our feelings. Like, and once you can actually accept that, like to truly understand and accept your own darkness, can you truly be able to understand who you are and what you can be for this world?
Mm.
Most of us are trying to be able to hide that darkness, be able to forget about it, put walls in front of it. And it's just, and that all that does is create more darkness.
Yes.
Got
Well,
to shine light
and
on that stuff, man.
you do. Well, because really, if you look at the feeling, like, why do I feel like that? Why, what's the core emotion? The core emotion is probably like envy, where you're like, yeah, this is envy. But then if you go further back and through, meditation, what I've learned how to do is essentially just think of a thought, like an emotion, like, okay, envy. Like, how do I feel about envy? And if you do it enough, if you meditate enough, you could actually go back through all of your memories that actually are associated with that one emotion. And then
Yeah.
you could find the truth, which is your envy is based on your a situation from when you were 5 years old and your older
It always
sister,
is.
yeah, your older sister had something that you wanted, and the fact that that wasn't recognized, that should have gone to you. And that's the core emotion. That's the core moment that this feeling was created. And that's the bad that you've been trying to suppress all the time and ignore, instead of addressing and finding out that was just some, you know, insignificant experience as a child that you never matured out of. And now you
And
can mature out of it. And now you're
Mark,
awesome.
look, you just save yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're a Mark PhD because I mean, that's every therapist is good. Oh, what happened to your childhood? I'm like, dude, like you just skipped the whole line of having to go through all the school to be able to learn that exact thing.
Oh, but wow, but that's the meditation. I couldn't do that before. Like before I had my awakening, a year and a half ago or so ago,
Yeah.
I could not even remember my childhood. Like I
Yeah.
was like, man, everybody has these childhood memories, and I just don't have that. Like I don't know where they went, but maybe I just have a bad memory. And what I realized was that I was actually just repressing like everything,
Yeah.
and it was so far down that to access it, I had to go like this roundabout way of thinking about emotions, and then I could access anything. Like it was incredible. The first time I did it, I was like, let me just think about something, and then it was like accessing like a database of just past events, and
Yeah.
then it was like, yeah, this is powerful. I can move on, or I could at least make progress towards something that was a really difficult situation for me to do, which was think about my childhood. And then you get into, then once you realize that, you're like, oh crap, there's a lot of stuff in here. And then you get to improve that stuff too. But like you said, it's really just identifying the trigger. Like, why do you feel this way? And if you think
Yeah.
it's bad, why do you think it's bad? And then just going through the cycle. And
Because you were
and
told it was bad.
you were told it was bad, and you were told, and just it goes back to the talking about being a man debate, where it's just like, yeah, we were all taught that men are, the ideal man. And I read an article about this, but they said the society's view of what a man should be is John Wick, where it's like a stoic, quiet, he never talks, he never does anything, he holds his
Yeah.
rage in until he's given the opportunity to use that rage for good, which is killing thousands of people in the case of John Wick. And then he gets his revenge, and now he has honor and pride in what he's done. And I'm like, what? That's what we're
Oh,
supposed to be, these quiet automatons that just do and say nothing unless it's to contribute resources to the thing that we're a part of. And I'm like, this is bad. This is really, like you were saying, like women are really good at speaking up, right? Like you never have to think like, what's she thinking right now?
and
How's
does it
she
make you
feeling?
uncomfortable? Like, I mean, we're even taught too, like when my wife is being very vulnerable and going through, I get uncomfortable and I almost And I'll be honest, like sometimes I'll even lash out because I'm upset at myself
Mm.
that I didn't protect her enough that would actually, and
Internalize.
she's like, dude, chill out. Like, it's not about you. You're making it about you again. Like, this is something I'm just releasing.
Mm.
And then you're taking it on like you didn't do enough to protect me so I wouldn't feel this way. But like, this is natural. And it's like, okay, well, still trying to break these, these fallacies
To
within
fix it.
ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it too. I mean, it's very, and my wife has actually been much better about like, hey, I'm not looking for feedback. I'm just venting. Like she'll start the
Yeah.
conversation with that. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm not going to try to fix anything. I'm not going to try to give advice or
AC, shut the F up and let me talk.
yes, that's it. And then once you realize that, you're like, oh God, this is so much easier. Like I don't even need to evaluate this situation. It's just you're just venting, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Now, the flip side, I don't know if that's true because I've tried venting before, and it usually, leads to other places.
Yeah.
But now I'm starting to do the same thing where I'm like, hey, I'm just venting about work or whatever. And honestly, there's a whole, I'm not going to mention the organization, but there's a whole marriage organization where the guy literally says, you don't bother your wife with your problems. You don't
Yeah.
bother her with your feelings. You don't bother her with literally your entire life experience. You just give her resources and support. And
I
that's
lived
your
that way for
job
a
as a
long
husband.
time.
I'm
And it
like,
was,
that's
it was, it was
horrible advice.
miserable.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it doesn't accomplish anything because deep down, and maybe not even deep down, what's happening. You're like, you know what? This is a dumb situation. We could fix this really easy, and instead we're just propagating it because I'm supposed to keep my stupid mouth shut the whole
Like
time.
Atlas with the entire world on your back.
Yeah, and then you're just like, I'm just supposed to carry this weight
Yeah.
forever, and it eventually breaks you, or it breaks the relationship. So it's not
Doesn't help the relationship, doesn't help your business. I mean, like, look,
have
it's just one
anything.
of those pieces. It does your
Yeah.
career or whatever it is. And I think this is that whole piece. Like you and I could sit here, and I love this conversation, brother, because we could sit here talk marketing, we could go to business, we could go with everything, but like all this, it's about that being human first and understanding yourself. All right, you want to be successful in your business, in your career, in your life. Like these are all important things that you need to be able to understand about yourself first and be able to get out there.
Yeah.
We
Well,
learned
I
it the
think
hard
there's
way.
well, we continue to, but we're making progress. And that's really what it's about. I think at the end of the day, like the entire point of all existence is just learning. And if you're a Christian or anybody who has any thought about what happens after you die, you're eternal. And so the only thing you possibly can get this from this life, because it's not going to be stuff, is just going to be lessons. And so your job is just to learn as much as possible. And hopefully afterwards, no matter what happens, you're enriched by the experience. And so,
And hopefully be able to take that information and knowledge that you learn and impart it down into your children, not just by
oh yeah,
words,
that's the
but by
best.
actions. And I think that's the bigger thing that and we've always heard the do as I say, not as I
How does it
do.
do?
Well, BS
That should
again.
just be a bad thing. That should be a
Like
complete.
kids don't learn that way. Kids learn by watching what we do. I can tell my son, I can tell my daughter all day long, but if I act like a crazy person, guess what? That's what they're gonna mimic and learn and be able to understand that that's okay.
Not just that, but they're going to learn that they don't have to do anything. All they have to do is say the right thing. You're teaching them that through that action. So no matter what you do, like you're imparting this, wisdom, maybe not wisdom all the time, but you're imparting that to the people you're around. And honestly, if you're just not honest with yourself, and even if you don't like things about yourself, like work on them. Don't
Yeah,
ignore them or pretend they don't exist. Just take a second and make some progress. So I think this podcast is part of that. And I
love that,
hope
brother.
that, people listening have learned that from this conversation. And we're going to have lots more because I think we was that an hour like flew by. I'm like, holy crap, we got more meetings and work to do. But really appreciate your time, Josh.
Of course, brother.
Always enjoyed talking to you. I think you are, an excellent representation of like what a modern man can do if you just think about it a little bit. Think outside yourself. And then not only improving yourself is improving everybody around you situation. So
Yeah.
I think you're doing a great job and
Thank
I
you, my
wish you
friend.
success.
Same for you, or I wouldn't be here.
Wow. In the meantime, where can people learn more about you, the dopamine dealer of LinkedIn?
I mean, of course, like LinkedIn, right? Like find me, connect with me, let me know how much you love Mark. I mean, whatever. Like that's these are but I mean, of course, too. I mean, like I'm pretty sure you could just search Joshua B. Lee. I've been trying to empower what I've learned throughout the years online through many amazing podcasts like this. So, like I said, like please look me up, connect with me, and that's all I need these days. Just to be able to understand that I can be able to share something of what we learned about and what we talked about today, Mark, and make someone else, just one other person, go, man, it's not just me. I've done my job. Like LinkedIn's just a vehicle of what I do to be able to support amazing humans, to be able to create more positive change in this world. But like overall, it's just about these amazing, just real conversations. So I appreciate you, my friend.
Well, I always enjoy time talking to you. I think you're doing amazing, and I think you're going to continue to do amazing. And teaching is learning, and I think that's why people like you and I do what we do, because it's like, yeah, a lot of people think that it's just for, oh, you just give away stuff. I'm like, no, I get benefit from this, and that's why I do it. And if you're doing things and it's not benefiting you in some way, then rethink about it, because the people you're serving want you to benefit too. And if they don't, then they really shouldn't be
It
watching you
needs
in
to
the
be
first place.
win-win, man. And again, if one's falling on their sword for the other, I mean, I'm going to be honest, that's not a win-win situation. And it's going to turn out, no matter how well you think it's going to work out, it's not going to be good in the end for anyone.
No, no. Long term, we all need to help each other, and it's going to be great, and that's what you got. That's literally the only thing that you have to believe. And I definitely believe that. So we're going to keep making it better. All right. Thank you so much for listening. Tune in next time for more podcast Mark. I'll be having more awesome individuals like Joshua B. Lee. And I'm not going to tell you the topics because I have no idea what they're going to be until we start talking. So tune in next time and you'll find out what they are.